I am dying. I know that now. The doctors have told me, my body has told me, and somewhere deep in the quiet of the night, the universe itself seems to be whispering it to me. 2 cancers, rare ones, the kind that don't negotiate and don't apologize. I have maybe weeks left, perhaps less. And I find myself lying here in this hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the little imperfections in the plaster, the way a physicist counts everything. Not out of obsession, but out of love, because even a ceiling tile, if you look at it long enough and honestly enough, becomes astonishing. Most men in my position reach for a Bible, some reach for a bottle, some call their lawyers. I reach for a question. That has always been my problem and my great joy, because here I am at the very edge of everything I have ever known, at the threshold where life ends and whatever comes after begins. And instead of being afraid, I am curious, unbearably, almost embarrassingly curious about what happens next, about what all of this meant, the atoms, the stars, the laughter, the grief, the 70 years of stumbling around this magnificent planet trying to understand it. What did all of this actually mean? And here is the question that has followed me my entire life. The one I avoided in public, danced around in lectures, half answered in interviews, and then quickly changed the subject. The question that I now, with very little time left and absolutely nothing to lose, am finally ready to face honestly. Does God exist? Not the God of Sunday sermons, not the God of political speeches, but something real, something that might actually matter when the lights go out. Sit with me for a while. I want to tell you what I honestly think. Part 1. Why listen to a physicist about God now? Before I go any further, you might ask a reasonable question. Why should you listen to me about God? I am a physicist. I spent my life thinking about quarks and photons and the quantum behavior of electrons. What do I know about the divine? And that is actually exactly the right question to ask. You should always ask why you should listen to anyone about anything. That instinct, that beautiful, skeptical, demanding instinct, is the most important thing a human mind can develop. It is more valuable than any answer I could ever give you. So good. Keep it sharp. But here is why I think this particular conversation might be worth your time. I have spent my entire adult life doing one thing and doing it as honestly as I possibly could, trying to understand how reality actually works, not how we wish it worked, not how it would be convenient for it to work, how it actually works underneath all the stories we tell ourselves about it. I worked on the atomic bomb at Los Alamos when I was barely old enough to shave properly, surrounded by the greatest minds of the 20th century, and I watched what human knowledge, real tested, verified knowledge, could unleash upon the world. I developed a way of drawing pictures that turned out to describe how light and matter interact at the deepest level we have ever probed. I sat on the commission that investigated the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster and demonstrated, with a piece of rubber and a glass of ice water, how an entire institution can deceive itself when it is more afraid of bad news than it is committed to truth. I have been wrong many times, magnificently, humiliatingly wrong, and I have learned that being wrong, really wrong, provably wrong is not a defeat. It is the engine of understanding. So when I talk to you about God, I am not bringing you theology, I am not bringing you comfort or tradition or the warmth of inherited belief. I am bringing you the only thing I have ever trusted completely. Honest inquiry, radical honesty, the kind that does not flinch, even here, even now, even about this. Part 2. Asking the question properly. So let us ask the question properly, because most people ask it wrong. They ask, does God exist? And then they immediately imagine a specific picture, a bearded figure on a throne, a cosmic judge tallying sins and virtues, a divine architect who drew up the blueprints for the universe on some celestial Monday morning and then stepped back to watch the chaos unfold. But that framing, that very specific picture, is already doing enormous damage to the inquiry before it even begins. It is like asking, is there something in that room, and then only looking for elephants. You have already decided what you are looking for, and in doing so you have blinded yourself to everything else. The real question, the honest question, the one that keeps me awake on nights when I am not too tired from the chemotherapy. It is something much larger and much stranger. Is there anything to this universe beyond the physical? Is there a depth to reality that science, even in its most triumphant moments, cannot quite reach? Is there something it is like to be the universe? Not just laws and particles and forces, but something that feels, something that means, something that perhaps even cares. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not about to tell you I had a vision. I am not about to describe a deathbed conversion. I am constitutionally incapable of pretending to believe something I do not believe, and I refuse to start now just because the clock is running out. But I am also, and this may surprise you, not about to tell you that the universe is just a cold machine grinding forward without purpose or meaning, and that when you die you simply stop, and that is the whole story. Case closed. Nothing to see here. Because here is what a lifetime of looking very closely at reality has taught me. Reality is far stranger than either of those simple stories. The universe is not behaving like a simple machine, and it is certainly not behaving like something we fully understand. There is something here, something extraordinary, something that every time I have gotten close to it, in the mathematics or in the laboratory or even in a quiet moment just watching light fall through a window, has filled me with something I can only describe as reverence. I do not know what to call it, but I refuse to pretend it is not there. Part 3. The honest answer. Here is the answer you are not expecting from me. I don't know. 3 words. The most honest 3 words in the English language. And the 3 words that almost no one, scientist or priest, atheist or believer, is willing to say with complete sincerity. Everyone wants to have arrived somewhere. Everyone wants the comfort of a conclusion. The atheist wants the clean, tidy certainty that there is nothing beyond the physical. The believer wants the warm reassurance that there is. Both of them, in their certainty, have stopped looking. I never stopped looking. And looking honestly means living inside the question rather than camping out in the answer. But here is what makes my I don't know different from a shrug. It is not the I don't know of indifference. It is not the I don't know of someone who has not thought about it. It is the I don't know of someone who has spent 70 years pressing his face against the glass of reality as hard as he possibly could, and has found that the glass goes deeper than he expected, that there are layers beyond layers, mysteries beyond mysteries, and that the universe keeps revealing, at every scale you examine it, something that feels almost impossibly, breathtakingly, improbably elegant. When I was a young man, I thought science would eventually close all the big doors. Give it enough time, enough cleverness, enough particle accelerators, and we would have a complete picture, a final theory, a total account. I no longer believe that, not because science has failed. Science has succeeded beyond anything our ancestors could have dreamed, but because every door science opens reveals 3 more doors behind it. Every answer generates 10 richer questions. The territory of the unknown has not shrunk during my lifetime. It has expanded, and what lives in that expanding territory of the unknown? What hides in the spaces between our equations, in the silence at the edge of what we can measure and verify? I genuinely cannot tell you. What I can tell you is this. I am not afraid of that darkness. I find it beautiful. The fact that the universe contains more than I can know does not diminish my wonder. It is the very source of it. If that is a kind of faith, then perhaps, without ever intending to, I became a man of faith after all, just not the kind anyone would have predicted. Part 4. Testing the idea. Let me tell you how I think about big questions, because method matters enormously. I had a friend. He died some years ago. He used to say that the strength of an idea is measured by how hard you try to break it, not how eloquently you defend it, not how many people agree with it, how hard you push against it, how many ways you attack it, how mercilessly you test it. If it survives all of that, then maybe you are getting somewhere. This is what I mean by robustness. A robust idea is one that can withstand not just friendly questioning, but full frontal assault. It can be exposed to the coldest logic, the most inconvenient evidence, the most hostile interrogation, and still remain standing. Now let us apply this to the question of God, or more precisely, to the question of whether there is any depth to reality beyond the purely physical. First attack, the scientific one. Everything we observe in nature has a physical explanation. Chemistry explains biology, physics explains chemistry. And though we do not yet have a complete unified theory, the track record of scientific explanation is so extraordinarily successful that it is perfectly reasonable to bet that the remaining gaps will eventually be filled. So why posit anything beyond the physical? Fair. That is a serious blow, and I do not want to duck it. But here is the counterattack, and it is an equally serious one. Science explains how. It has never, not once, even attempted to explain why. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why do the laws of physics have the form they have? Why is there a universe at all? And why does it contain beings capable of asking that question? These are not gaps in our knowledge that a better telescope will fill. They are logical preconditions of the entire scientific enterprise. Questions that science, by its own design, cannot answer from within. Second attack. Consciousness. Every subjective experience you have ever had. The specific feeling of grief, the taste of cold water on a hot day, the particular quality of afternoon light in autumn. None of this appears in our equations. We can describe the neural correlates of experience. We cannot explain why those correlates are accompanied by experience at all. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains the most embarrassing unsolved problem in all of science. If matter alone fully explains reality, why is there something it is like to be alive? That question I have never heard answered, and I have listened very carefully. Part 5. What I think about religion. I want to say something about religion now, and I want to say it carefully because this is where I have been misunderstood more than anywhere else. People assume that because I am a scientist, I am hostile to religion, that I think religious people are simply wrong or naive or clinging to comfortable fairy tales because they cannot handle the cold truth of the universe. That is not what I think, and it is not what a lifetime of honest observation has shown me. What I think is more nuanced, and I believe more honest than either the religious fundamentalist or the militant atheist would be comfortable hearing. Religion, in its deepest form, is an attempt to do something genuinely important. It is an attempt to grapple with the things that matter most, with meaning, with morality, with the mystery of existence, with the staggering fact that we are conscious beings who know we will die. These are not small problems. These are the central problems of human life, and the fact that religion has addressed them imperfectly, sometimes harmfully, sometimes beautifully, does not mean the problems themselves are unimportant. Where I part ways with religious tradition is not on the questions. The questions are magnificent. I part ways on the methodology of the answers. When a religion says this is true and you must not question it, it has abandoned the very mechanism by which humanity distinguishes truth from error. That mechanism is doubt. That mechanism is testing. That mechanism is the humble acknowledgement that we could be wrong. A faith that cannot survive honest questioning is not a faith worth having, but a faith that welcomes questioning. That says, ask me the hardest question you can and let us explore together. That is something I can respect deeply. That is something that, in its spirit, if not its theology, is very close to what science itself does, and science, for its part, would do well to acknowledge its own limitations with more grace than it sometimes manages. Science is our most powerful tool for understanding the physical world. It is not a complete philosophy of life. It cannot tell you whom to love or what is worth dying for, or how to face the end with courage and dignity. These are the questions religion was invented to address, and however imperfect the answers, the questions themselves deserve our most serious and sustained attention. I believe that science and genuine spiritual inquiry are not enemies. They are, at their best, the same impulse, the desire to know what is real. Part 6. The Desert. I want to tell you about a moment. I was in the high desert of New Mexico once, years ago, alone, sitting on a rock as the sun went down and the sky went through a sequence of colors that I lacked the vocabulary to properly describe. It was not just beautiful, it was something more than beautiful. It had a quality that pressed on my chest from the inside, that made me feel simultaneously very small and strangely, inexplicably significant. Physicists are not supposed to talk like this. We are supposed to be coolly analytical, perpetually rational, unmoved by sentiment. But that has never been me, and I refuse to perform that particular kind of coldness. The truth is, I have spent my entire life moved by equations, moved by the behavior of electrons, moved by the completely unreasonable fact that the universe obeys mathematical laws at all, that abstract symbols scratched on a blackboard by a human being actually correspond to how reality behaves at its most fundamental level. That correspondence, that mysterious, inexplicable, gorgeous correspondence. It has never stopped astonishing me. Part 7. What dying feels like. And when I think about dying, really think about it, not abstractly, but concretely. The specific fact that this particular collection of atoms that has been me for 70 years will dissolve back into the universe from which it came. I do not feel dread. I feel something closer to wonder, because the atoms do not disappear. They go on. They will be part of the soil, part of the ocean, part of the air that someone else breathes on a morning centuries from now. The information that has been organized into this body and this mind will disperse, will spread, will in some sense become part of everything. Is that immortality? No, not in any conventional sense, but it is not nothing. It is very far from nothing. And lying here in this hospital bed, watching the light change on the ceiling tiles and feeling the strange, quiet loosening of the self that illness brings, I find that I am grateful, immensely, overwhelmingly, unexpectedly grateful for all of it, every single bewildering, beautiful, heartbreaking bit of it. Part 8. The Deepest Mystery. There is one more mystery I want to leave you with, because it has haunted me more than any other, and because I think it points towards something important, something that neither religion nor science has yet managed to fully explain. Why does mathematics work? I mean this seriously, not as a rhetorical question, as a genuine, urgent, deeply strange mystery. Mathematics is something human beings invented or discovered, depending on your philosophical commitments, entirely inside our own heads. Pure mathematics, at its most abstract, has nothing to do with the physical world. Mathematicians sit in rooms and think about the properties of imaginary objects governed by rules they themselves define, with no intention whatsoever of describing reality. They are playing an intellectual game, the most beautiful and demanding game ever invented, with no regard for practical application. And then, and here is the part that should stop you cold, physicists pick up those same mathematical structures, sometimes decades or centuries later, and find that they describe the physical universe with uncanny, almost supernatural precision. The complex numbers that were invented as a pure abstraction turned out to be essential for quantum mechanics. The geometry that Riemann developed as a mathematical curiosity turned out to be exactly the language needed to describe curved spacetime. The symmetry groups studied by pure mathematicians turned out to be the deep structure underlying particle physics. This keeps happening, over and over. Pure mathematics, invented in the absence of any physical motivation, turns out to describe physical reality at its deepest level. Why? Why should the universe be mathematical at all? Why should abstract structures generated inside human minds correspond to the behavior of particles and fields and forces that have existed for billions of years before minds of any kind appeared on the scene? This is not a small question. It has no satisfactory explanation, unless, and I offer this not as a conclusion but as a possibility, an avenue worth walking down, unless mind and universe are not as separate as we assume, unless consciousness and physical reality share some common root we have not yet identified, unless, at the deepest level, to understand the universe is in some sense to participate in something that was always already in the business of understanding itself. I do not know if that is true, but I cannot stop thinking about it. Part 9. What I would give you. If I could give you one thing, one actual useful transferable thing from everything I have learned in 70 years of living and thinking, it would be this: fall in love with not knowing, not as a resignation, not as intellectual laziness dressed up in philosophical clothing, but as an active, joyful, disciplined practice of staying genuinely open to what reality might be, rather than settling too quickly for what you need it to be. The most dangerous thing a mind can do is decide too soon. The most costly thing a person can do is trade wonder for comfort. Swap the live question for the dead answer just because the live question is uncomfortable to carry around. I have carried questions my entire life, heavy ones, questions about God and meaning and consciousness and why anything exists at all, and I have not resolved them. And I am telling you, from here at the end, that carrying those questions, really carrying them and not putting them down, has been among the greatest privileges of my life. It has kept me awake. It has kept me honest. It has kept me, in the deepest sense of the word, alive. The universe does not owe us answers. It owes us nothing. The extraordinary luck of getting to exist at all, of getting to look around and notice things and feel things and ask questions, that is already so far beyond what we had any right to expect that it seems almost indecent to complain that the answers are not included. Be curious, be honest, be willing to be wrong, love the questions more than the answers. And if you ever find yourself absolutely certain about the biggest things, certain about God, certain about meaning, certain about the final nature of reality, take that certainty as a warning sign. The universe is stranger and richer than any certainty can contain. Part 10. The End. They tell me I have very little time left. Days, perhaps, maybe a week if I am stubborn about it, and I have always been somewhat stubborn. I am not afraid. I want you to know that. Not because I am brave and not because I have resolved all the questions. I have not. And I have just spent a long time explaining to you why I am comfortable with that, but because something has settled in me in these final weeks. A kind of quietness I did not have before. A willingness to simply be here, in this moment, in this body, in this small room with its imperfect ceiling tiles, without needing it to be anything other than what it is. I have loved this universe. I want that on the record. I have loved it the way you love something you have never fully understood, which is to say, completely and without reservation. I have loved the fact that it exists at all. I have loved that it contains mathematics and music and the migration of birds and the specific way a child laughs when something genuinely surprises them. I have loved that it gave rise to consciousness, to beings who can look back at the stars and know they are made of the same stuff and feel something about that fact. Whatever I am, this arrangement of atoms, this temporary eddy of self-awareness in the stream of time, I am going back to where I came from, back to the universe that made me, that was always making me, that will go on making other astonishing things long after this particular version of astonishment has run its course. Is there something on the other side? I genuinely don't know. And for the first time in my life, not knowing feels not like failure, but like the most honest and beautiful place I have ever stood. The universe was here before me, it will be here after me, and somehow, impossibly gratefully for a little while, I got to be part of it. That is enough. That is more than enough.